When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: The Empty Mile. User: John J0X. Posted December 22nd, 1998.
I didn't even want the job. It was supposed to be a temp gig, 3 weeks at most, just enough to get me through a rough patch while I waited for the refinery to open back up. But here I was, 6 months later, driving a battered Ford cargo van across state lines at 3 in the goddamn morning, delivering fleet vehicles nobody cared about for a company that probably wouldn't notice if I disappeared. The van rattled as I crested a hill outside Oxford, the cracked windshield catching the moonlight like a spiderweb of bad decisions. No radio, no cruise control. Just me, a thermos of truck stop coffee, and the highway, slick with dew and stretched out like a long, dark whisper between pine forests. When I saw the signs saying the rest stop was only a mile ahead, I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My bladder had been howling for the past 20 minutes, and I was so wired from caffeine and fatigue that I'd started seeing shapes moving just outside the headlight beams. The exit peeled off like a lazy snake, guiding me into a massive gravel lot lit up by halogen lights that buzzed overhead like something alive. It struck me how big the place was, not just spacious, oversized, like it was built for a future population that never arrived. There was room for a dozen semis, picnic tables under a metal awning, and even a designated dog walking trail beyond a small chain-link fence. But not a single vehicle, not a soul, just the building ahead, tall and square, its glass panels glowing sterile white. I killed the engine and stepped out. The air was cold and completely still. No wind, no bugs, not even the distant rustle of trees, just the soft tick of the van's cooling engine and the crunch of gravel under my boots. There was a faint smell riding the air, bleach or ammonia maybe, sharp enough to make me wrinkle my nose. The glass double doors stood wide open. Not automatic, just propped open, like someone had stepped outside for a smoke and never came back. I hesitated. Everything about this place was too clean, too still, but I'd been on the road since midnight, and at this point, my kidneys were making the decisions. Inside, the lobby looked like a hotel built for machines. Beige tile floors, fake wood paneling, potted plants that might have been plastic. There was no dust, no fingerprints, not even smudges on the vending machines. The overhead fluorescence buzzed faintly, but it didn't flicker. A bank of hard plastic chairs sat perfectly aligned near the wall, untouched. I called out, "Hello?" But my voice just bounced off the tile and faded into nothing. No attendant, no janitor, not even the soft sound of a distant toilet flushing. I made my way to the men's room with that same subtle urgency you get when you feel like you're somewhere you don't belong. The bathroom was empty, immaculate. The stalls stood open, each one clean as a showroom model. The mirrors were spotless, and the faucets ran warm water without issue. The metal crank on the paper towel dispenser squealed as I turned it, the kind of squeal that stuck in your teeth. I dried my hands and stood for a moment, staring at my own reflection, drawn face, sunken eyes, grime beneath the nails from too many weeks on the road. And then something behind me moved. I spun, heart pounding, but the room was just as empty as before. Still, I didn't linger. I stepped back into the lobby, feeling a chill that hadn't been there before. The vending machines hummed softly in the corner, their lights casting a faint flicker on the far wall. I walked toward them and fed a crumpled dollar into the soda machine. The screen lit up, accepted the money, then blinked and went dark. Out of service, it flashed. Then, just for a split second, something else flickered across the screen. Something fast and hard to describe. A pattern, maybe a face. I blinked, but it was gone. That's when I heard the footsteps. Soft, deliberate, coming from the back hallway. I froze. Every hair on my body lifted like I'd touched a live wire. The sound was rhythmic, slow, head to toe. I turned toward the hallway expecting, hoping to see a janitor or another traveler, someone who could explain the emptiness, but there was no one. "Hello?" I called again, louder now. The footsteps stopped. The silence that followed felt wrong. Not just the absence of sound, but a vacuum. Something pressing in, thick and suffocating. I took a slow step backward toward the exit. The hair on the back of my neck tingled. The double doors were shut. Not locked, not jammed, just closed tight. The open air I'd walked through a few minutes ago was gone, like it had never been there to begin with. I reached out, tried the handle, and it moved, stiff and cold like a door in an abandoned building. Outside, the night had turned. The lot was darker, the lights overhead buzzed more aggressively now, flickering ever so slightly. The van felt farther away, like it had shifted backwards a few yards while I was inside. I walked fast, my boot soles skidding on loose gravel. The van loomed in the dark like a lifeboat drifting away from a sinking ship. I opened the door, slammed it shut behind me, and locked it with trembling fingers. The dashboard lights flickered on. I jammed the key into the ignition. Nothing. No click, no cough, just silence. I tried again. The dome light overhead blinked once, then went out. My breath fogged the windshield. And then I saw her. In the rearview mirror, a woman sat in the back seat. Soaking wet, hair dripping, clothes plastered to pale skin. Her mouth hung slightly open and her eyes were blank, black pits that didn't blink, didn't move, just watched. I turned around in my seat, heart in my throat, and the back was empty. I turned the key again, and the engine roared to life all at once, like it had never been dead at all. I didn't wait to think it through, though. I threw it into gear and floored it, gravel spraying out behind me as I tore down the exit ramp and back onto the highway. 5 minutes later, I passed a sign. Next rest area, 45 miles. I looked into the rearview mirror. Nothing behind me, just the 2-lane stretch of highway and the long pines bending slightly in the wind. No glow on the horizon, no building, no lights, no rest stop at all. Just the empty mile behind me and the slow realization that maybe I'd crossed into somewhere I wasn't supposed to be.
Subject: the house on Steamboat. User: Full House 213. Posted August 29th, 2000.
They say every town's got a haunted house. Ours just happens to be mine. It was a 1-story ranch house off Steamboat Drive, 3 blocks from the elementary school, right where the neighborhood started to age out of its mid-century charm and into tired familiarity. We moved in when I was 6. Beige siding, green shutters, a chain-link fence that leaned a little too far toward the sidewalk. It didn't look haunted, and nothing in that neighborhood did, and that was kind of the point. I don't think it started right away anyway. At least I don't remember anything strange those first few months. Mostly, I remember the echo of my sneakers on the tile floor and the smell of my mom's Windex obsession as she tried to tame years of someone else's dust. But at some point, maybe after the first winter, I started to hear the voices. They weren't threatening. They didn't shout or scream, just conversations, soft and indistinct. Sometimes a man and woman murmuring low in the laundry room. Other times a single voice humming a tune I didn't know. One night, it was a full sentence clear as day. Don't forget the light. I still don't know what it meant, but I remember the way my whole body froze beneath the covers, how I stared at the ceiling fan and prayed it was the tail end of a dream. When I told my parents, they said I must have left the TV on, or I was talking in my sleep, or it was the wind, the pipes, a creaky house settling, the classics. And I wanted to believe them, really, I did, but things kept happening. A glass of milk slid off the table when no one was near it. A stack of magazines rearranged itself overnight. My favorite baseball cap would go missing for days and show up tucked neatly under the couch cushions, like someone had placed it there on purpose. One afternoon, when I was homesick from school, I saw a woman in a blue dress standing at the end of the hallway. She wasn't looking at me, just standing there like she'd forgotten what she came for. I screamed. My mom came running, but the hallway was empty, and she gave me that look, that forced smile one where her voice gets real calm, too calm, and she says, "Maybe it was the cough syrup, sweetie." Even then, I could feel it. That awful tug, like she didn't believe me. But worse than that, like she did and didn't want to. That was the part I couldn't shake. Not just the fear, but the way they handled it. They rolled their eyes when I brought it up at dinner, made jokes about me being our little ghost hunter. I remember one Christmas, my dad even got me a Ouija board. Not a real one, mind you, just the kind you pick up from the toy aisle at the drugstore. The board was thin, glossy cardboard with a cheap plastic planchette that rattled when you shook it. He handed it to me with a wink and said, "Let us know if you talk to Elvis." I laughed along, but the truth is, it stung. I knew it wasn't meant to help me understand what I was experiencing. It was a joke at my expense, a way to turn something strange and frightening into a punchline. I started keeping it to myself, but every now and then I'd catch my dad locking the hall closet with an old skeleton key, or my mom praying under her breath as she folded laundry, whispering the same 3 Hail Marys like clockwork. The night our dog, Scout, refused to go into the master bedroom and slept outside the door barking all night, they said it was probably fireworks. It was January. They knew. And I think that's what really hurt. Not that they didn't believe me, but that they did and pretended they didn't. That they chose the comfort of denial over the honesty of fear, and that they made me feel like I was losing my mind in the process. There was a window in my room that faced the neighbor's fence, and sometimes I'd lie awake watching shadows move across it when nothing was there to cast them. I'd hear footsteps in the attic, even though it was barely a crawl space. One time, I heard someone knock, 3 soft knocks on my bedroom door at 2 a.m., but when I opened it, the hallway was pitch black and empty. I never felt like the house wanted to hurt me. But I never felt like I was alone either. And when you're a kid, not being believed about something like that can shape you in quiet, complicated ways. It made me question everything, made me doubt myself in places where I should have felt safest. We lived there for 12 years. Long enough for the paint to peel off the trim and for the flower beds out front to turn to dirt and weeds. Long enough for me to grow out of Saturday morning cartoons and into quiet teenage isolation. I started sleeping with headphones in just to drown out whatever else might be whispering through the walls. I left for college and didn't come back much. When I did, the house felt smaller, still haunted, but somehow quieter, like whatever had been there had aged too. After my mom died, I found a journal tucked into the back of her nightstand drawer. She'd only filled a few pages, mostly prayers and grocery lists, but one entry stopped me cold. It was dated the year I turned 11. He heard them again last night. I told him it was the pipes, but they were talking about the light again. The same voices. Every time I think it's over, it starts up again. I don't want him to grow up afraid. I don't want me to be afraid. Reading that broke something in me. And then it patched something too. My dad lives in Arizona now. Says he likes the dry air. We talk more than we used to. Not about the house, not directly, but about memories, choices, things we wished we'd done differently. I haven't asked him about the voices. I probably never will. Some ghosts, I've learned, aren't meant to be exorcised, just acknowledged. The house still stands on Steamboat Drive. New shutters now, a fresh coat of paint. I drove by last summer when I was in town for a funeral. A kid's bike was on the lawn and the porch light flickered just once as I passed. I almost stopped, almost knocked on the door, but what would I say? Hi, sorry to bother you, but I used to live here. It's haunted, not in a scary way, just haunted, but you probably know that already. So, I kept driving. Some part of me likes to believe the house is still whispering, still humming lullabies in the quiet, and maybe that's just what old houses do, hold the echoes of all the people who tried to feel safe inside them. I don't blame my parents anymore. They were just trying to protect me and maybe themselves too, and that's the thing about ghosts. They don't always want to hurt you. Sometimes they're just trying to remind you they were here, and sometimes the people who love you, they are too.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.